Okay, hello. Welcome to today's video. If you're new, my name is Sydney. I'm so happy to have you here. We're gonna do a recent reads wrap up. And I have like 25 books to talk about and review with you. So get comfy, grab a snack, grab a drink, whatever you'd like. I have all my notes, so if you see me looking down, that's what I'm looking at. I hope that you enjoy this video. I have a lot to talk about. This is gonna be like all the books that I read since my last reading wrap up. So starting from the middle of May all the way through July. I was in my library era. I was checking out a lot of books, putting them on hold at my library to read physically, and then of course with ebooks and audiobooks and stuff like that. So I don't have a lot of physical books to hold up and show you. These are the only ones of the 25 that I physically own, but I will link them all down below if you want to check them out on Goodreads. I will have them all in the description box for you to check out. Without further ado, let's get right into it, shall we? First thing I read since my last reading wrap up on my channel, Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. This is one that I read for my family book club. It's a opposites attract rom-com. She's a doctor in the big city. He is the mayor of a small town, and they're about like a 2-hour drive away from each other. They have their little meet cute moment. Honestly, I don't remember what happens. I don't remember that part. But they can't stay away from each other. So they try to make it work. She tries to visit him in the small town, gets to know the people that live there. It's pretty cute. But I don't remember like a ton, like the details, but I remember enjoying it when I was reading it. It was my first Abby Jimenez book, and I rated this 4 out of 5 stars. The only thing I'll say that I didn't love about this is that they fell into the sheets too quickly for my liking. I like in my romances for it to be a little bit more of like a tension buildup, less. I definitely don't like insta love. I definitely don't like insta lust. Whether they are physically or emotionally getting together too soon, I'm like tuned out. I'm just like, what's the point of reading this anymore, you know? So it quickly pulls me out of any love story if they already sleep together within like the first 100 pages or whatever, or just like at any point in the book. Like, I'm not a spice girly unless it's like dark romance and it's supposed to be like super taboo and like whatever, you're there for the smut, that's fine. But like, I don't read romances for the spice. I just don't. I love the tension, I love the mutual pining, and this didn't really have that in a way that I like. I just would have preferred it to be a little bit more slow burn. That's that for this one. But 4 out of 5 stars, still liked it, still like Abby Jimenez's writing. Thought the characters like were well-rounded and enjoyable. So that's that one. Let's put them back up here so you can see them. There we go. And then next I read another one that I have physically, Falling by TJ Newman. I read this one along with another one I'm going to talk about in a second for a physical TBR reading vlog, so I'll link that down below if you want to watch it and haven't already. This is a high-stakes disaster thriller about a plane, actually more so about the pilot. He is threatened by this man on the ground right before they're supposed to take off. He has kidnapped the pilot's family and says, I'm going to kill them unless you crash this plane. So like, you have a big decision to make here. Do you want to save your family or do you want to save the hundreds of people on board? Obviously, it's not an easy decision to make, and he's having to figure it out while 35,000 feet in the air. So I loved the premise of this book. I was highly anticipating it for a while. It took me a while to get to it. I don't know why. And it's pretty short. It was a quick read. But when I did read it, I loved it for what it was, but I didn't love how predictable it kind of was, especially towards the end. I did not love the ending. After a certain point, I was just kind of like, it's not as like high stakes anymore. It's not as like intense. It was still like action packed, but it just wasn't like my type of high stake thriller. I still gave it 4 out of 5 stars though, and I would recommend it if the premise sounds good to you. Personal preference for me didn't hit the mark quite enough for it to be a 5-star. The next book I read was The Inmate by Frida McFadden. I read this as an ebook, and it was my first Frida McFadden book. and I was actually recommended this by my friend, my coworker. Her friend read it, and she told me, hey, you should check this out. She said it was really good, and I was like, you know what, Frida McFadden has been on my radar recently. I'm gonna do it. This is my favorite Frida McFadden of the 3 that I've read from her. I do really love this one. I read it really quickly. It was gripping and thrilling and all that kind of good stuff that you want. The main character's name is Brooke. She is the new nurse practitioner at this maximum security prison for men. And at this prison, her high school sweetheart is spending the rest of his life after being convicted by her for multiple murders. But no one else at this prison knows their connection. So she's here for a reason. She knows that this is where Shane is being held, and he's known as like the most dangerous prisoner here. Like everyone is warning her about him without even knowing that they already have a previous connection. I gave this 5 stars. It was quite twisty. I enjoyed the way that Frida McFadden wrote a clueless yet naive female main character. Sometimes I think I like those types of characters. That's definitely kind of what you get in this one. She doesn't make the best decisions, but I really still enjoyed reading about her and her story. I feel like it does a good job at like adding to the suspense of it all. So next up, I read Out of Love by Hazel Hayes. This is a love story told in reverse. It is very much like a personal development story about, what's her name? Oh yeah, this is the book that you don't even know her first name, which is crazy because you still get so connected to her and like you feel for her. It's emotional. It's a story of like hope and grief and all that kind of stuff, but you don't even know her first name, which I thought was very unique, and I really liked it. This is the same vlog, in the same vlog as Falling, so again, it's linked down below if you want to hear more of my thoughts on it and my reading experience as I went through it. But yeah, I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. Next up, I read The Nothing Man by Catherine Ryan Howard. I really like this author. I have read a few of her books now. She's one of my like auto read authors. I feel like she's always going to be on my radar from now on to see like what she's going to be writing next, and I follow her on Instagram. I don't know, I just really like her and her writing. The Nothing Man is about Eve Black. She's kind of like a final girl amongst her family after a very tragic encounter with the Nothing Man. She's the only one who survives, and so she writes a memoir about her efforts to track down this man. But then you're also reading from Jim Doyle's perspective. He finds this book that she's written, that Eve has written, in a supermarket where he works, and he picks it up, and he soon finds out that this is about him because he is the Nothing Man, and he is now terrified that Eve is going to be onto him a little too much. So his mission is to find her and stop her because he's been able to live a normal life. He works at the supermarket, no one knows who he is. So his mission is to find her before she finds him. I gave this 4 stars as well. It was really quick, fast-paced thriller. It was very interesting to read from the killer's point of view, and it had a fun twist at the end. Next up, I read The Fine Print by Lauren Asher. I gave this book 1 star. This is the first book in the Dreamland Billionaires series, and I think my problem is I just don't like Lauren Asher's writing. This book was disgusting to me. I just hated it because this is very insta-lust and just not my vibe. I don't like it. Like, wholly tropey too. Like, there were so many typical romance tropes used in this, especially at the end. Everything was just like thrown in there, like trope after trope after trope. And it's not that I have a problem with any of those tropes. It's just that she literally used every single one in the book. It was just not like unique. It had no specialness about it. 1 star. I was not a fan at all, but this is my toxic trait. I could be convinced to continue the series. Like, if you say that the other ones are better. I really love these covers that, even though I gave it 1 star, makes me want to buy it along with the rest of the series because I just like the way they look, and I'm also a book collector on top of being a reader. So I could be convinced to continue the series and follow the other brothers and their love stories because I know that they're obviously going to have different tropes and different conflicts and whatever, so maybe. but I did read it as an ebook because I think it's on KU, so I read it on Kindle Unlimited. Anyways, yeah, this book was just not good. I didn't like it at all. Next up, for family book club, we read The Housemaid by Frida McFadden. So this is another Frida McFadden book that I got into in the last couple of months. This one is about Millie. She's looking for a job to get back on her feet after spending 10 years in prison. And you don't know why she was in prison until later on, so I'm not going to tell you. She's shocked when Nina Winchester offers her a lot of money to cook, clean, and watch over her daughter as the live-in housemaid. She can't turn this offer down because she's living out of her car, she needs money, so she says yes. Only then she soon finds out that the family has got some secrets that are far more dangerous than her own. This book is getting a lot of recent hype. I feel like a lot of people are reading this or have read it. I definitely recommend it. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. A lot of 4 stars. Love how Frida McFadden's books are just so quick to get through and they're very entertaining. Just a pretty good standard thriller that keeps you guessing until the end. Next up from the library, I got Upgrade by Blake Crouch. This is a sci-fi thriller about something that I completely forget. I just only can remember that it's the premise is this man, this regular old Joe, his name I think is Logan. He gets an upgraded brain, I guess. I don't really know. I was so lost and definitely don't remember much of anything of this because it was really science heavy and just not a good book for Sydney. I do like Blake Crouch. Before this one I had read Recursion. I read that last 2 years ago now, I think. I liked that one, but still very heavy on the sci-fi. That's just hard for me to wrap my head around. So I gave this one 2 stars. I do like this author and I will read another one of his books that I'll talk about later in this video, but this Upgrade this one didn't work for me. And then I read The Last Word by Taylor Adams. I'm not sure at what point in the months we're at now. I haven't really broken it up to tell you. I think this one I read in July. I also put a hold on at my library for this one because Taylor Adams is a auto read author for me as well, since now I have given 2 of his books 5 stars, including this one. So they're not perfect thrillers and definitely not for everyone. I know a lot of people don't like The Last Word. A lot of people don't like No Exit, which is the other 5-star I've given. They're not going to be for everyone because he likes to write a lot of over-the-top thrillers, which are my personal fave, where they're realistic yet unrealistic at the same time. Some of the scenes are just really kind of out there, but those are fun for me to read. Similar to Frida McFadden, I feel like he writes suspicious yet naive female main characters where they just should probably know better, but they just don't make the greatest decisions. This one, as you may already know by now, is about Emma, who writes a 1-star review for a horror slasher book, then gets revenge stalked by the author while staying at this secluded beach house in Washington. There's also a dog companion, which I found super cute and fun. So yeah, I gave this one 5 out of 5 stars. Looking forward to seeing what Taylor Adams writes next, because this is the definition of a hit or miss author for me, because I've given 2 of his books 5 stars. I've given 1 of his books 1 star, and he does have one other one on his backlist called Eye Shot that I still have to get to. I don't have high hopes for that one because I think that's one of his earlier written ones, but I'm excited to see what he writes in the future. Then I read Insomnia, and I don't remember the author. Sarah Pinborough? Yeah, I think that's who it is. It's about a woman who starts losing sleep in the days leading up to her 40th birthday, which is exactly what happened to her mother, who went crazy. And that's pretty much it. I gave this one 2 stars because the premise was interesting, but it lost the excitement factor after a while. It started to wear off, and it was ultimately very underwhelming, and the plot kind of dragged. Nothing special about that one. I don't necessarily recommend it. One I do very much recommend to you is one I do now have physically. Got this one from the library to read, but then I loved it so much. Spoiler already, I gave it 5 stars. Probably in the top 3, like most definitely at this point in time, at this point in the year, it's in my top 3 books of 2023, which is so exciting. So since I read it, like I bought this one before I bought The Last Word. So that's got to tell you something. Like I bought this one because I loved it so much and I found it on Pango. So anyways, long story short, it's The Enigma of Room 622 by Joelle Dicker. Oh my gosh. Okay. So I have a whole page written about this one. This is all about all of my thoughts on this one. Okay. So buckle up. I loved this. I picked this up based on a recommendation from Jordan from Sorry Book Solid on YouTube. This book is chef's kiss to me. Like it's just the perfect top tier murder mystery. I read it so fast, tandem with the audiobook, and I would recommend doing that if you want to pick this book up. It keeps up the excitement of the book without it feeling like a slog to get through, because as you can see, it is quite long and it is like just very layered. I would suggest reading it along with the audio. Not solely on audio, because it's good to like also read it and like see the names, so you're not just like popping it on and then like doing something else and then not even paying attention to what's happening. It's very good to have the text in front of you while listening to the audio. Anyway, so that's how I would suggest this book if you do want to pick it up. It's, like I said, like multi-layered story about a hotel in Switzerland. The main character's name is also Joel, and he's writing his next novel. He finds himself investigating an unsolved crime that happened years ago in the exact same hotel that he has escaped to recover from a bad breakup. And he meets Scarlett, who indeed becomes his very own Watson in this story. It pretty much goes from there. Also jumps back in time to read from those characters' point of view from when the murder first occurred. So like leading up to the murder, and then years later when Joel and Scarlett are investigating it. It's just so good. It's absolutely genius with amazing characters and a twist you definitely won't see coming. So this is the one I would recommend the most out of all of these books I'm talking about. It was so fun. And then I read The Lake by Natasha Preston. This one I think was a right book, right time kind of thing, because I'm not normally in the mood for this kind of book because it's a young adult mystery thriller. Just normally wouldn't be something that I'd want to pick up, but I read this at the right time, I guess, because I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. It follows Esme and Kayla, who go back to Camp Pine Lake as junior counselors after something bad happened that they did last time they were there as campers. A lot of the Goodreads reviews that you'll see for this book are like, OMG, I hate that ending. This was so good until that end. What the heck? Blah, blah, blah. But I'm over here with the unpopular opinion of not minding and actually kind of liking the ending of this book. I will say it's not like anything super crazy and mind-blowing, but it was low-key satisfying in my opinion. It was definitely memorable the way that it ended. And I just personally liked it for this story specifically. Yeah, 3 out of 5 stars for The Lake. Next, I read the companion book to Part of Your World. This is Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. So it's the same kind of world. This one follows the best friend of the girl from the first book. Her name is Bree. Then the main male character's name is Jacob. This one I liked more than Part of Your World. I think the banter was cute, although it could have been better because Bree in the first book was hilarious and witty and really funny. Like I loved her dialogue in the first book, but this one felt like a little bit lacking in that. Like I was really excited to see her character in this, but it just kind of felt a little like she felt like different people kind of. It just wasn't as noticeable, like her humor and stuff. But something I really loved and appreciated about this book was how relatable the male main character Jacob was in this with his social anxiety. As someone who struggles with very severe social anxiety, this was comforting to see and read about. I highlighted and underlined and annotated the crap out of this one. I guess I've never really read about a character with social anxiety before. So this one was just very amazing because of that. I only gave it 4 out of 5 stars though. It was not a 5-star for me, but I do think that it could still be in my favorites of the year, which is weird to say because it meant more to me in other ways, like outside of how good I thought the book as a whole was. This one had more tension than the first book too, which I did love. And I was definitely cheesing and laughing out loud at times. So I do like this one more than the first one. Couldn't really get through the last 30 pages though, as you can kind of see my annotations or my tabs stop at the end, like just at the very, very end. There's just like nothing there because I didn't really finish it. I just checked out like after the final conflict was resolved. I didn't feel the need to continue because like I guess I just wasn't really invested in their relationship. I was just there to like relate to Jacob, I guess. So 4 out of 5 stars, but definitely a favorite because it meant a lot to read from a character with social anxiety. And then I read Stillhouse Lake by Rachel Kane. This is about a woman named Gina Royal who has 2 kids with a man who is secretly a serial killer. She is completely unaware of this. In the very, very beginning of the book, she finds out about her husband's hidden life because of a car accident. A car runs into their garage where he has been hiding the woman that he's been sexually assaulting and killing. So, kind of wild. Gina is forced to take the kids, change their names, and run away. Obviously, the husband is now in jail, but they're always on the run. They're always kind of changing their names because they're still being stalked and, targeted by people who think that she had something to do with her husband's murders, although she was completely unaware that he was doing the things that he was doing. There's like internet trolls that are still targeting them and trying to hurt them. So that's kind of where the story goes. That's what happens. They find refuge in this house on Stillhouse Lake. I am actually going to read to you what I wrote on Goodreads for this book. I said this was a very typical thriller reading. Oh my gosh. Let's try this again. This was a very typical thriller reading experience for me with a steady climb of interest in the beginning, but ultimately it never hits the mark and falls at top speed to I really don't care anymore territory, and thus asterisk finds audiobook and bumps up to 3 times speed just to get it over with. I do appreciate any book that will reference The Walking Dead though, even if it was subtle and short-lived. So that's what I have to say about that book. It was just kind of like mid 3 stars. Now we've got a fantasy. I read Daughter of No Worlds by Carissa Broadbent. I'm not the person to come to for fantasy recommendations. This is not a fantasy booktube channel. However, I do still read them and try to make the most of them. I try to enjoy them as much as I can, even though that's not one of my preferred genres because it doesn't like stick in my brain. I don't really grasp them unless they're urban fantasies, like kind of just set in the real world. Anything with a lot of world building is going to be hard for me. They can be a good time if that's what I'm in the mood for, but I have no idea how to explain them or how to recommend them to people because it's just not my genre. So I've got other girlies here on YouTube that I go to for those recommendations. I'm just here to tell you that I read this one and I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. Next up, I read Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. This is the other book by him that I have read in the last couple of months, and this is my favorite one by him. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed the reveal in this one. It's basically about a man named Jason who is knocked out and abducted off the streets by a masked person. And when he wakes up, his life is not what it used to be. Everything has changed. His wife and son are no longer his, and he's forced to confront terrifying questions about reality. Is this all a dream, or did I just wake up from one? And I really liked this. I listened to the audio while kind of like tandem reading it physically from the library. It definitely wasn't all super easy to read. Like, it wasn't all super easy to understand. Parts of it I definitely did miss, but I really liked the reveal, and once you kind of figure out what's going on, it was like a good twist. That's what I have to say about that one. I don't know if I'm really going to read more from Blake Crouch just because they're very heavy on the sci-fi. Next up, I read The Overnight Guest. I saw someone on Instagram recommend the audio of this, so I picked it up. It was very quick to get through. I think I read it in one day. But I'm gonna be completely honest, I remember squat diddly. In the moment after finishing it, I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. But now I'm not so sure because it didn't leave an impact on me. Clearly, I can't remember anything other than it's about a woman who retreats to write a book. It also has like similar vibes to No Exit, with there being a snowstorm and an abandoned child, but it in no way compares to that based on my overall enjoyment of the story and my remembrance of the story. So I wouldn't really compare it to No Exit at all, just that it has similar vibes with some of the aspects of it. 3.5 stars, maybe 3 stars now because I really don't remember anything. And that's The Overnight Guest. Then for Family Book Club, we continued with the whole Housemaid thing. And we read The Housemaid's Secret by Frida McFadden. This is the continuation of Millie's story, and it picks up right where the first one left off, so I'm not going to tell you anything to keep from spoiling, obviously. I don't think it was very necessary. I didn't like it as much as the first one. It does similar things in terms of like the writing structure, and it just wasn't my favorite. Like, I didn't love that it did that in the first book, and then when she did it again, I was just like, why? What are you doing? It just felt repetitive and underwhelming because of that. 3.5 stars for this guy. It still had surprising and unpredictable twists, so if that's what you're looking for, I say both of these books are good to get into thrillers. You know, I'm not a huge fan. This next one continues the streak of 3.5 stars. I read The Lost Apothecary by Sarah Penner. I really liked this one and thought it was a nice change of pace because it had a pretty unique premise. Goodreads says it's a female apothecary secretly dispensing poisons to liberate women from the men who have wronged them, setting 3 lives across centuries on a dangerous collision course. It was fun, and I liked all the POVs that you get to read from, especially Caroline is in the present day. She's like the main character, I guess you could say, but then you also read from 2 other characters that takes place in the 1700s. It's very feminist and atmospheric. Kind of reminded me of the vibes of Kingdom of the Wicked by Carrie Maniscalco for some reason. There's not really like a romance in this one, but it does follow like Caroline going through things with a man and I like how her story ended. If it ended any other way, I probably would have deducted a star, but I do like how this one played out, so I liked it. Yeah, 3.5 stars. Then I read an arc, The Last One by Will Dean from NetGalley as an e-arc, so thank you to them and the publisher for sending it my way. Unfortunately, I was not a huge fan of it because it went in a direction that I didn't like. I didn't love the direction that it took after being so intrigued and excited about the premise of it. Like, when I read the synopsis, I was very excited to pick it up and read it. What it's about, what the synopsis says: a woman goes on a cruise with her boyfriend, and after the first night when she wakes up, she notices that he's gone. He's not in the bed with her anymore. And then she ends up noticing that everyone else on the ship is gone, and she is the only one on this entire cruise ship. And then it goes from there. Some people will love this and others will greatly dislike it for what it is, like I did. It's hard to say anything else or recommend it like without spoiling it because it takes a turn. So I don't know, read this one at your own risk, I guess. I gave it 2 out of 5 stars. Then what I read was my most recent 5-star at this point, and that is Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. I read this so fast. This was my first R.F. Kuang. I loved it so much, even though it was kind of short and sweet. I think the story is told in a very concise and beautiful way. It like makes its point while also just being really entertaining. And the first chapter like hooks you. I was hooked. Although I went into it somewhat blind, I just assumed generally what it was about based on the cover and the title of it. I didn't know anything else besides that about a white woman who steals an Asian woman's novel manuscript thing. So if you haven't been spoiled for anything else, then I'm just going to suggest that's all you do know before going into it. It's so good. 5 out of 5 stars. And I read Happy Place by Emily Henry. This may be a little controversial, but this was so mid for me. I don't think I'm going to love another Emily Henry book as much as I did People We Meet on Vacation, and that's sad, but also okay. I think her and I have such different life experiences that she's just gonna write about love and friendship in a way that I can't relate to. Like, she's not always gonna write books like People We Meet on Vacation for me. I've always been a fan of Friends to Lovers, so that's why I did like People We Meet on Vacation. Although Happy Place does have a little bit of a Friends to Lovers vibe, it's also Second Chance, which I think People We Meet is kind of like that too, right? But this one is very heavy on like the found family trope, which I'm not a fan of. That was the major fault that I had with this book, is that it wasn't relatable, and then I don't like the found family trope. So, should have known. But that's not the case for a lot of people who read this and ended up loving it. They're either a fan of the trope or they can just really relate to it. And since I wasn't in either of those categories, like I didn't like that it was found family and I didn't like that it wasn't relatable, that's why I didn't like it as a whole, right? Okay, so I gave this 3 out of 5 stars. It's just not good. I didn't like it. She has announced her next book already. This girl can't stop. She just is so consistent with writing books, which I admire, and I'm definitely going to be picking up every one that she writes from now on. Her next one's going to be called Funny Story, so I will be reading that one. I do want to say too, like, when I read Book Lovers last year, I did DNF it, and I was able to get through Happy Place this time around, and I think that's because I had the audio. If I had the audio for Book Lovers, I want to say that I probably could have finished it too. And the reason I was able to get through Happy Place is because I had the audio. So I don't know what that says, but it's got to say something. Anyways, moving on right along to the last book that I have to... Oh wait, no, not the last book. I skipped a page. Okay, we've got like 3 more books to talk about. After Happy Place, I read and finished Hostage by Claire McIntosh, I believe. This one is similar to Falling, with it having to do with a plane. There is a husband and a wife and a daughter that are like the main characters that you follow. The husband is a cop and the wife is a flight attendant, if I'm remembering correctly. And it's about this very historical flight that's about to happen. It's gonna be like from Australia to somewhere. It's like a 20-hour flight. I can't remember really anything about this book now that I'm thinking about it. This flight hasn't been done before, or hasn't been done in a really, really long time. So there's a lot of passengers who are wanting to get on this plane and like make history, I guess. And so the chapters go by like each hour of the plane ride, and it's about like a terrorist attack. So yeah, I don't know. I can't really remember anything else. It's jam-packed with a lot of stuff happens. It's somewhat thrilling and suspenseful at times, but not very memorable, obviously. And I do remember something about the ending that I didn't love, but I don't remember what that was. I just remember not loving how it ended. So I gave this 2.5 stars, which is right down the middle because that's half of 5. Obviously, basic math. And I feel like I always give those kinds of books that are right down the middle a 3-star, when in reality I should just be rating them 2.5, because that's exactly half of 5. Anyways, that's a tangent that I don't need to go on, but you know what I mean. 2.5 stars for Hostage. I don't know. Next up, I read The Least of My Scars by Stephen Graham Jones. This is so weird. It's about a serial killer who doesn't leave his apartment, and he basically door dashes his victims to his apartment to kill them, and like I think like meat grinds them, and like there's a wet vac, and I don't even know. This was so weird. You're reading his monologue, and he's obviously a psychopath, so it's going to be very confusing to read. After I finished, went to Reddit and read a lot of posts about people and like what they thought of this book and like their theories and everything. A lot of people loved it because they could understand it, I guess, somehow. I couldn't. I had no idea what was happening. My Goodreads review for this one says, oh, okay, so I gave it 2 stars. I don't think I said that yet. I gave it 2 out of 5 stars. And I said, this rating is based entirely on my own personal enjoyment and understanding of this book. It was gruesome and intense and extreme. I just couldn't stick with the first-person narrative of a psychopath without desperately wanting a cut and dry explanation of what the actual was going on. If you like extreme horror and like really vague descriptions from a serial killer, then I don't know, maybe you'd like it. I'm interested in Stephen Graham Jones and like all that he has written, so I'm gonna keep reading his books because they're interesting to me. I've read 2 other ones of his, I think. The Night of the Mannequins or whatever, that's a novella, shorter horror book. And then also The Only Good Indians. I'm gonna read more of his books just to kind of like feel it out, but The Least of My Scars was very interesting. Now finally, the last book that I have to talk about is my last little physical one here, waiting to be talked about, The Unsinkable Greta James. As you will be able to see when I do my August wrap up, I read a lot of cruise ship based books with that setting. I read a lot of books about cruise ships because I just recently went on a cruise and I wanted the same vibes. I wanted the similar setting. I wanted to be thrown into the atmosphere. I don't know. I'm losing brain cells quickly. Good thing this is our last book. This one is about, what's her name?
Oh my gosh.
What's her name? Oh my gosh, I have no idea. Greta. Her name is Greta Sydney. Like I said, losing brain cells. She is a musician. And this story has a lot to do with grief because Greta's mom passes away before this story takes place. The story is about her taking place of her mom and going on this cruise ship vacation with her father, who she doesn't have the best relationship with. I really liked it, just don't really know why I liked it so much. But I read it very quickly. Again, another one that was just really easy to get through. I love the cruise ship setting. I love the terminology that it used to immerse you into where you were. Very impactful, and I felt connected to the main character. There's books I read that I just couldn't care less about the people, like about the characters. So I don't know what the differences are. Like I don't know what specifically this book did to make me care about what was going on, but it did it. This one just hit for some reason. Gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I would recommend it if you like to go on cruises. There's a romance element to this. It's just like kind of like a chill, laid back story, and I enjoyed it. So that's really all I have to say. And that wraps up this wrap up. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it to the end of this video, you're a real one, because this took an hour to film. I don't normally talk this much. I'll be back for just an August wrap up in a couple of weeks. So, oh my gosh, yeah. Thank you so much for watching this video. I will see you next time. Bye!